There's not much else out there that kind of does what these can do.
Look, some people refer to these as a baby Evo. No, that is not true, especially mechanically.
At the risk of sounding like your typical car journalist wanker, it just feels like such a cohesive package. Now, back in the day when Mitsubishi really put their minds to something, most of the time, greatness occurred. The Galant VR4 and 3000 GT, the Pajero Evo, actually the whole range of Lancer Evolution models, all cars that when new were category leaders and now used are automotive classics. And arguably, the best of these had one thing in common: they were developed by Ralliart. But just because a car is wearing this iconic badge, does that mean you should buy one? Especially when it's glued to something as humble as a Mitsubishi Colt. Well, to answer all of those questions, let's delve into the details of these spicy little nuggets, starting with what can go wrong with the exterior, and that means talking about the paint. Now, according to the owners, and especially in hot climates like here in Australia, the clear coat and the paint will fade over time if it's not looked after. And this can especially be a problem on the darker colours. Also, the actual paint quality, it's not exactly at, let's say, Lexus levels, but you've got to remember, this is based on a budget-conscious little hatchback, so let's not go expecting too much from the paint. Also, if you're not familiar with what a Colt Ralliart even is, don't think for a second that it's just a sticker and body kit pack. It is so much more than that. I'm not going to go as far as saying it's an engineering marvel, but it's a pretty impressive little piece of kit. We're talking a stiffer spot-welded chassis, performance suspension bolted to strengthened damper mounts, numerous body braces, obviously the sporty body kit, and most importantly, pretty impressive levels of firepower thanks to a turbocharged 1.5 litre engine. And look, I know those power figures don't seem all that impressive compared to what's out today, but you've got to remember, these things weigh only a little bit over 1,000 kilos, and that means these have pretty much the same power to weight ratio as the most recent Suzuki Swift Sport. And that's a car renowned for being able to put a smile on your face. And internationally, you might come across some examples that shift gears via a CVT. Luckily, we avoided those. But we also missed out on a couple of trim specs. No version R or version R specials here. We just have the one and only Ralliart. But back to common exterior issues, and we need to talk about these black pieces of trim, or I should call them the 50 shades of grey pieces of trim, because they will fade and turn like light grey. However, this is so easily fixed. There are so many quality car care products out there that can rejuvenate them, or you could just paint them black and you'll never have to fix them ever again. Also, we are talking about a budget-conscious car from the mid-2000s, so the headlights, they are going to go hazy, but these are so easily fixed. There's loads of tutorials online, check them out. And then when it comes to exterior electronic gremlins, you know what? Hardly any at all. We did find a couple of owners that had some issues with the power windows sort of failing to go up and down, or they just slowed down, but these are super cheap and easy fixes. Generally speaking, you're not going to have a problem. However, something that you do need to be on the lookout for is accident damage, poorly repaired accident damage, and just shitty mods. Because these have become so affordable and they're fun to drive, and here at least they are P-plate illegal, plenty of dickheads have ruined these and they generally can't afford to fix them properly. You've got to be on the lookout for that stuff. Just go over the whole car and look for all the usual stuff, panel gaps or paint not matching between the different panels. And here's a tip, if you're watching this from a warmer climate and there's any signs of rust on the car at all, that's a great sign that the thing has had a crash and just been repaired poorly. However, if you're watching this from a colder climate, especially with salted roads, in that case, yeah, rust can be a thing, especially underneath. Get under there and check. Also, and look, we'll get into what these are like to drive shortly, but just take it easy when you're driving, because if you do have an accident and you need to source some exterior parts, some of this stuff is getting really hard to find. You'd hate for the car to be off the road for months because it's impossible to source this or this or this. Actually, you know what? Sourcing the car itself might be a challenge, because these were not a sales success for Mitsubishi when they were brand new, and unfortunately plenty of them now have been written off. But this does mean that on the used market, prices have become pretty stable. For example, at the very bottom end of the market, and we're talking about some clapped out one that requires plenty of TLC, you're looking around about $5,000 here in Australia. At the other end of the spectrum, something absolutely mint, show condition, about 15 grand. But you know what? Considering the car was asking less than 30 grand when brand new, that shows pretty decent depreciation over that period of time. Also, as far as competition goes, when we're talking tiny size and this sort of performance, there's not much else out there that kind of does what these can do. For this budget, a first and second gen Swift Sport are definitely options, and a Bath 500 generally asks a pretty decent chunk more. The 1.5 litre Mazda 2 and Honda Jazz can both be fun little chariots, although they're nowhere near as performance focused as the Mitsubishi. Actually, I think this is an area that Honda really dropped the ball. Imagine if they did a Type R version of the Jazz. Imagine a battle between this thing and a Type R Jazz. That is one I'd love to see. And look, obviously, if you're happy to creep up in size a little bit, there are a host of other options for Colt Ralliart money. The Renault Megane RS, the Mark V Golf GTI, Alfa Romeo Giulietta, Hyundai Veloster, Kia Proceed GT, Corolla Sportivo, Mazda 3 MPS, and BMW 130i. Actually, if anybody out there has a 130i and you live in Sydney and you'd be happy to lend it to us so we can film it, please email me via the link below because we would love to feature one. But look, back to these, and okay, you might disagree with what I'm about to say here, but I love the whole look and vibe of this. I love the size of it, and I love the overall design because it just looks like a tough and angry little nugget. Also, there was a mid-cycle update for the 2008 to 2010 models. This is easily identified on the pre-update 06 and 07 cars. The headlights look all kind of smoked out. Post-update like these, sort of, they clear up, and the wheels change from a 7-spoke design to these multi-spokes. However, when it does come to the wheels, chances are by now any you're looking at on the used market will be wearing some aftermarket rims, and I tell you what, when these are modified correctly, God, they can look good. Unfortunately though, plenty out there haven't been modified correctly. And like any car, when you cut corners modifying, it can just end in a world of hurt. So many of these have just been ruined with cheap eBay spec coilovers and just crap accessories. It's a pretty special little car. I just think it deserves quality items. Even when it comes to the consumables like the tires or the brake pads or even the windscreen wiper blades, please use quality items. Actually, just on the wiper blades, make sure you hit the Wipertech link below to get 15% off and free express shipping on the only wiper blades we choose to use. They're so easy to order online. As long as you've got fingers and thumbs, they're a breeze to fit and they wipe brilliantly. And we're going to give Rory, that owns this car, a set for free as a thank you present for lending us his car. And we're going to do the same for you when you lend us your car. Email me via the link below. Okay, now inside, what do you need to be on the lookout for in here in terms of issues and complaints? Not much really, it's pretty good news. Obviously being based on a budget little hatchback, it is pretty much an ocean of hard plastics in here. And yeah, some of the switchgear, it can feel a bit cheap and nasty. In saying that though, plenty of owners have reported excellent durability for these interiors. Short of the leather on the steering wheel, it's probably seeing better days, but that can be retrimmed. And the same can be said for the leather boot around the gear shift. That's probably disintegrated and decomposed by now. Also, all of these hard plastics can lead to quite a few rattles and weird squeaks. Although in saying that, it might not be as bad as you might assume. However, we do need to talk about the seats because that update in 2008 ditched the Recaros that came on the pre-update cars and replaced them with these Ralliart style sports seats. And look, they're sporty enough to sit in. There's a decent amount of comfort to them. Ergonomics are okay. The issue I've got, and a lot of owners have as well, both with the Recaros and these seats, is that they just sit a little bit too high. It would be nice if you could adjust them a little bit lower, but these are pleasant enough. And also, fun fact on the Recaros, they're exactly the same seats as you'll find in an Evo 8 MR. However, some owners have had issues where they get a little bit of play between the seat and the actual seat rail. So when you brake or accelerate, they kind of like click back and forth, and that's really annoying. Also, some other owners claim that they're about as comfortable to sit in as a dentist chair when you're getting root canal after about 15 minutes. Oh, another thing with the Recaros as well, the bolsters can wear to the point that you're basically left with just the steel frame of the seat digging into your rib cage. Some of you might enjoy that sensation. It's just not for me, no judgment at all, but yeah, not my bag. And obviously for the age of this car, the infotainment systems absolutely suck. If it has Bluetooth, it's going to be sketchy at best. There's clearly no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, it's too old for that. The speakers, they've probably had the sword by now, and also, it seems that Mitsubishi used a single tuft of cotton wool for interior sound insulation in here. But the good news is, All of this stuff is so easily updated, but as we said with the other modifications before, please use quality components in here. Actually, for any of this sort of stuff, you've got to check out our mates at Automotive Superstore. We've added the link down below. They carry over 400,000 different parts and products. It's super easy to search on their website, and they ship Australia-wide, and they're mates of ours. Check them out, they're bloody legends. Now, there's another big complaint with these interiors that we came across. Actually, I might go as far as saying it's probably the most common complaint we came across, but we're going to elaborate on that when we get to driving this thing. But besides the complaints, it's all really good news for these interiors. The owners complimented just how effective the air conditioning is, even on the hottest days, and there's plenty of cubby holes for all your nicks and knacks and stuff. Glove boxes are really excellent size. There's 5 bottle holders, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The only people that need 5 bottle holders are those maniacs that race motorbikes across the Dakar Rally. You've got a little storage cubby hole here, you've got a little shelf under here under the steering column, you've got door bins, they're a bit shallow, but you've got spots here that will collect all sorts of dust and life's filth. Actually, the design of the center console here, it is renowned for attracting crap. And that's about it. There's no room for sunglasses up there, there's nothing under the seats. But yeah, for the size of car, decent practicality. Not jazz levels, but close enough. However, the safety levels maybe aren't the car's strong suit. Even when these were brand new, they failed to get a full 5-star safety rating in terms of crash tests. These days, if it got 1 star, I'd be bloody amazed. Although, not that you're buying a car like this for its safety credentials, but if you're a mum and dad watching this because your kid is raving about how great these are and they are P-plater friendly, there are safer alternatives out there. Also, and this can vary depending on where you're watching this from, but compared to some other cars in this category, this thing has about as many creature comforts as your local public toilet. There's no cruise control, there's no steering wheel mounted buttons, no heated seats. Also, the flux capacitor, it's not factory fitted. Not even a massage function, unless somebody in the back seat is feeling very accommodating. Speaking of the back seat and accommodation, I'm exactly 3 centimeters taller than Tennessee Middle State running back Javaris and Lamar. This is in my driving position, and it's interesting back here. Great amount of foot room, good amount of knee room considering the size of the car, but unlike the standard Colt, which is a 5-seater, this is only a 4-seater. I think that makes more sense because to sit in the middle here with passengers, you'd have to be wafer thin. The seat comfort, not too bad. Also, you can recline these back so you look like you're one of those dickheads that drives around like this. You don't want to be one of those. People will laugh and judge you. But then, once this is back up, hang on, wait up, there we go. Once this is back up, actually really comfortable. Also, the windows are a great size, so it feels airy and spacious back here. Your kids aren't going to get claustrophobic. It's actually quite a nice place to be. As far as features and practicality back here, not a whole lot really, that's to be expected. More spots here to collect life's filth or your kids' mucus or decomposing food, but there's no bins on the doors there, there's nothing in the center console there. Yeah, it's got grab handles back here. If it was 1953, that'd be impressive. Now in the boot, I feel like this is the area that the Mitsubishi engineers, they went along to the 2001 Tokyo Motor Show and saw the back end of a Honda Jazz and how it tumbles forward and the magic seats disappear into the floor, and they went, God damn it, why didn't we think of that? These ones, they do fold forward and this whole section kind of tumbles forward, so you do have more space back here, but it is nowhere near as spacious as a Honda Jazz. It's a good amount of space in general for a car this size, but it's no Honda Jazz. Now, before we get into driving this and showing you how fun it is to drive, got a fun fact for you. It turns out that about 3/4 of the people that watch ReDriven videos on the regular haven't subscribed. How selfish is that? But the thing is, when you subscribe, it allows us to make more free videos for you, and surely that's a good thing for the entire world, right? Also, if you'd like even more ReDriven perks, why not join our membership program? The link is down there. And so is the link to the free cheat sheet for this car. Honestly, if you're in the market to buy one of these, the cheat sheet is a must read. We've listed out all the common issues and more. Check it out. And now to what these are like to drive. They're hilariously fun, aren't they? Yes, they are. We'll get to that in a second. But first of all, they can be guilty of a few issues. First of all, just being able to see where you're going. Plenty of owners have complained about this, but the A-pillars are so thick. They look like they're capable of holding up an apartment block. They're that chunky. Why are they so thick, Mitsubishi? Secondly, as I alluded to before, these can be pretty guilty for some interior rattles and strange sounds. In saying that though, this particular example is really, really good. And if the one you're looking at is really rattly, just focus on all the wonderful turbo sounds and that should drown out the percussive ensemble going on from the dashboard. Thirdly, a few owners have complained that the throttle response when standard can be a bit underwhelming, and also the car can be guilty of a bit of rev hang. However, do your homework on the excellent owners groups and forums, because there are a few hacks to this problem that should sort it out. Actually, just on the owners groups, okay, what a brilliant bunch of people. If you're buying one of these, you've got to join R Colt and Ralliart Colt NZ and all the other owners groups and forums out there. They were all instrumental in helping us put this video together. Cannot thank them enough. Join those groups, they're bloody legends. But now to the good stuff. You might assume that these feel like Mitsubishi just bolted a punchy little engine into a Colt and then left it at that. No, it doesn't. At the risk of sounding like your typical car journalist wanker, it just feels like such a cohesive package. Seriously, the steering feel compared to the shift weight and feel, the pedal weight, and even the placement of like the brake to the accelerator so it's so easy to heel and tow, through to just the feeling you get through the seat of your pants, it all combines to give you this impression that this is such a talented little car. And you know what? On the right rubber, it certainly is. Roundabouts, 90-degree corners through to sweeping bends, they all become this car's playground. It's also apparently quite satisfying when this leaves far more powerful and more expensive vehicles in the dust through a set of corners. Apparently, so I've heard. And also, because it's so small and light, it makes it feel like you're going so much faster than you actually are. And surely that's the perfect have your cake and eat it too kind of scenario in a car, because it means you can have all the fun without the risk of losing your license. But then the flip side of it being so small and light, you might assume that it feels really nervous and jittery over, bumps during corners. But no, it doesn't. This is going to sound weird, but the suspension feels very mature. It's got this glued to the road kind of feeling, but then the balance through the corners is outrageously good. And then we come to this engine, and I tell you what, this thing is a cracker. Yes, it's really fun to overtake and to pull into traffic because you've got, a great amount of torque in a light little car, but then at the same time, it's one of the few small turbocharged engines I've driven for a while that still encourages you to rev it out. When you get up into the red line, it's like it comes alive all over again. So again, you've kind of got the best of naturally aspirated characteristics with all the deliciousness of that low down torque. It's brilliant. Also, something else that came up in the research time and time again is just how well this engine responds to some intelligent modifications. In fact, there are plenty of owners out there that daily drive these, but then on every second weekend they're doing hill climbs or track days and beating on them, and they just tend to go forever, which therefore gives you the impression that this engine, the whole powertrain, is incredibly reliable. Is it? Unfortunately, I can't elaborate on that because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jimberly.
Overall, look, they are actually very reliable. Issues like coolant leaks and oil leaks are really not that common, or certainly no more common than any other Japanese car of this age. They can occasionally have fuel pump issues, and that usually manifests in a lean air fuel ratio fault code. Typically that's just the age of the pump, so quite often you just put a pump in it and it fixes it. A known problem is cracking of the exhaust manifold where the turbo mounts. That is relatively common, but more common in vehicles that have been modified, that are running higher boost. They just generate a lot more heat and they are prone to cracking. The transmissions in these, look, they are a bit of a weak point. The shift cables can wear and the shift linkages on the top of the gearbox can wear as well. And a lot of people complain about the synchros being a little bit underdone, and you're likely to get some crunching if you do rush it. The main shaft bearings and the lay shaft bearings on these can wear prematurely. That is more common in higher mileage and transmissions that have never had their oil changed. The clutch too, a lot of owners complaining that the clutch wears prematurely and the clutch release bearing fails as well. Now, all of these transmission issues can be mitigated by having a little bit of mechanical sympathy and not driving like an absolute tool, or just learning how to drive a manual properly in the first place. So yeah, overall, mechanically speaking, in standard form, these are pretty good. But when you start digging, you can find a whole bunch of catastrophic engine and transmission failures. So if it's been modified, look, all bets are off. And the same can be said if it's been owned by a dickhead.
But we've run into a bit of a problem here because we really, really want to say, yes, you should buy a Colt Ralliart. The problem is, so many of these have just been ruined by dickheads. Look, if you're happy to approach the Colt Ralliart as a project car, meaning it will sit in your shed for the next decade waiting for you to find the free time to sort all of its issues out, yeah, great, buy any old example. But if you actually want to drive and enjoy the car, just wait, okay? Wait till the right example comes along, make sure it passes a full pre-purchase inspection, and then, yeah, dive in, because the right one of these can make for such an awesome little car. But then again, so can one of these. Any you're looking at will probably be... However, something that you do need to be on the lookout for... I feel like this is an area that the Mitsubishi... Oh, wow. And it seems that they've used a single tuft of cotton... What the hell, cockatoos? Bloody hell.